and good evening, councillors. We have it's 6 o'clock Monday, the 15th of June, and we are having a special council meeting as called by the CEO last week. I'd start to begin by starting to the meeting off by just recognising that we are meeting today, even though we're in many different spots, but we are meeting today on the land of the Brakelong people of the Gunai Kurnai Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. If there are any elders with us this evening, either via live stream watching, I acknowledge them as well and pay my respects to them. As this is a council meeting, we'll run through a normal agenda, and our first item on the agenda is the opening prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. For the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. We are doing this meeting, as we have done with the last couple of meetings with Latrobe City Council, via our GoToMeeting service and streaming live on YouTube. This has been a part of the omnibus bill that was passed by the state government to allow local governments to do this, and we have been doing this for a number of months now. The conditions of us being able to meet like this is that everyone who is part of the council, the 9 councillors and the CEO, must be seen and must be heard, must be able to be seen and must be able to hear as well. So much like a roll call, as we have done every other time, councillors, I'll go around the room and the virtual room and just check that you can hear the other councillors and that you can see the other councillors, and we can check in as a part of this live stream to ensure that we're meeting the legislation requirements that for us to meet online. So in no particular order, and I'm just seeing my screen, and I know that all the screens are different with these, but I'll check. Councillor Darren Howe, are you with us?
Yes, can hear you all and see all, Mr Mayor. All good.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brad Law.
All good this end, Dan.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Middlemas.
All good, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Good to have you. Councillor Alan McFarlane.
Yes, Mr Mayor, all's well.
Councillor Darryl White.
Yes, Mr Mayor, all clear, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sharon Gibson.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Councillor Dale Harriman.
Yes, Mr Mayor, can see and hear everybody, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kelly O'Callaghan.
All clear, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Great to have you here. And our CEO, Stephen Piacenti, is with us. Can you see us and hear us, Stephen?
I can. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CEO. It's great to have you here with us as well. Councillors, as we move through the agenda, we will be able to speak and hear and see each other, and have an option to talk to as well. Our next item on the agenda is apologies and leaves of absence, and as we've just done our roll call, there are no apologies. No one's missing tonight, so it's great to have everyone here for our special council meeting. And item 4 is a declaration of interest. This is where councillors can recognise that they may have an interest in one of the items, whether it be a conflict of interest or a direct interest. Councillor Alan McFarlane, I see you waving at me.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have an interest in item 9.1, the first proposed resolution. There's proposed resolution number 1 of 9.1. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. And I think, as is a standard process for you when we do these budgets on that item. Anyone else have an interest at all or a conflict? No, we're all quiet on that. If anything comes up during discussion this evening and you feel as if you need to declare, you can do it at the time as well. Item 5 on our agenda is acknowledgements, and this is an option, a part of our meeting where we can acknowledge people within our community. Not normal standard practice in a special council meeting, but if anyone does want to acknowledge anyone, they can at this point. Wonderful. And public participation time is at 6. This is an option where our community can be a part of our council meetings, and they can either speak to us directly via video link or submit questions. We have no speakers this evening, and we have had no questions submitted either. So item 6 on our council agenda is that's done as well, because we're moving on from that. So the next item on our agenda is the agenda proper. We have 3 items to consider tonight in regional, city growth and investment, and then asset and presentation, and then organisational performance. So item 7.1 is the business and community support recovery package that has been presented, and you have the resolution, the proposed resolution in front of you there. Do you have a mover at all, councillors? Councillor White and Councillor Gibson, in order? Yeah. Councillor White and Councillor Gibson, do I have any opposition to this proposed resolution or motion as it is now? No. Councillor White.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, as always, as it's mentioned in the report, Council on the 6th of April introduced a range of support measures and initiatives to support the business sector, community organisations and sporting groups that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And since then, all of those council agreed support measures have been successfully implemented and monitored over time. And such things as, from the business support's point of view, has been about waivers for fees and charges, waiver of planning permit fees, business support vouchers and webinars for business. And on the community supports front, it's been about continued waiver of charges for sporting and community groups, and waiver of venue hire charges for community groups as well. And so the cost of these initiatives so far for the financial year 2019-20 is, as mentioned in the report, $167,941. And this report, which is very comprehensive, and you know, it's a credit to the troops of the organisation for the preparation of the content of the report. This report is really about a proposed resolution to seek council endorsement for the implementation of a second phase of business support and recovery package of it, which is up to a value of $1.728 million, primarily focused on the 2020/2021 financial year. The report comprehensively details the range of business and community support measures council can assist with over the next 12 months that have been identified from council's community consultation results of recent business surveys, business roundtables and other anecdotes. The report also gives a detail of a range of measures that council can assist and support our volunteers supporting and community groups and organisations to get them through to the other side of this pandemic. This is a very comprehensive report and is key council response to supporting our very much valued Latrobe City community through these very difficult times. And I commend the proposed resolution to councillors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Gibson, you were the seconder. You have an option to speak now if you wish.
Just briefly, as somebody normally says, look, I'm more than happy to support this measure that we're putting in place. We know that different ones, especially businesses and sporting clubs, have done it tough and are doing it tough. So we're taking the measures to ensure that they come out the other side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion, either for or against? No. Get some shaking of heads. No. Councillor White, would you like to close?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've said what I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. As we have had speakers, we do need to put it to the vote. So all those in favour of 7.1? All hands are up. Thank you very much. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to item 8.1 on our agenda. which is the Community Sports and Infrastructure Stimulus Program. Do I have a mover for 8.1? Councillor McFarlane. Councillor White is the seconder. Councillor McFarlane, and then Councillor White was seconding. Any opposition to 8.1? This opposition. Councillor McFarlane, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, the opportunity has arisen for council to submit applications towards the Community Sports Infrastructure Stimulus Program, and in line with our recreation needs assessment, we've identified or been able to identify three projects that fit that. The Churchill Soccer Club Pavilion in Hazelwood South, lighting projects at a number of reserves, and the Latrobe City Sports and Entertainment Stadium in Morwell grandstand upgrade. Mr Mayor, there's no guarantee that we'll be successful with with all of these projects, but at least if we have them in the pot, hopefully we can get one, and hopefully we might end up with three. But I'm certainly satisfied that from a priority point of view, that we've those three sitting in our council priorities, and I commend the recommendation of the council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor White, did you wish to speak to this? You were the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, just very, I was going to say briefly, but I better think of something else. I'm in support of the proposed resolution here too, Mr Mayor, and I think that as Councillor McFarlane did indicate, these particular projects have been identified through the recreation needs assessment matrix that the council has been able to develop over time to try and give some ranking to all the projects that we have before us, and the whole long list of those. And from my, from council's point of view, the Churchill Soccer Club Pavilion is one that's really desperately needed of some resolution there. And again, with the other projects, including the lighting projects at Traralgon Rec Reserve and the George Bates Reserve, Ronald Reserve, and of course the other one is the important works that really need to be undertaken at what I would call, what I affectionately call Falcons Park, and I think that they're all very worthy projects, and they're worthy of supporting for consideration. And as Councillor McFarlane did indicate, there's no guarantees in that regard, and one over the other in terms of getting an allocation. But I think that they all, though, are very worthy propositions that ought to be seriously considered by the funding agencies. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor White. Any other councillor wish to speak to this 8.1 on our agenda? No, no movement, no noise. No. Thank you, councillors. Councillor McFarlane, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor White put it all very eloquently. The report says it all, the recommendation says it all, and I look forward to that passing through the council. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McFarlane. As we've had speakers, we do need to put it to the vote, so we'll need to have a show of hands, councillors. All those in favour? Very, very clear. All hands are seen. That's great. Thank you very much. That covers off unanimously. Thank you very much. We move to 9.1 on our agenda. Councillor Gibson, I note you. This is where we are looking at our draft budget for 2020-21. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move an alt that I sent out or circulated earlier today, please.
All right, see if we can get that on the screen. I think councillors have had an opportunity. Here's an alternate motion that Councillor Gibson's proposing this evening. That was circulated earlier.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Minimus. Seconding. Thank you. I was going to ask if you'd had an opportunity to read it, but seconding it, so that's good. Thank you very much. Any opposition, councillors? We have opposition, yeah. Councillor Gibson, would you like to speak to your alternate? Before we start your clock, we'll get your microphone on. There we are.
On would be good. Hang on, can you turn the light on, please? Oh, there we go.
There be
Sorry.
light.
Yeah, it helps. Look, Mr. Mayor, never before have we been placed or not placed a percentage on the budget prior to sending it out for public submissions. So this is a first. Yet never before have we been in circumstances that we find ourselves now. The motion is all about laying the facts before our community prior to council bringing down any budget. So it's just about the information. As we know, some councils are talking about a 0% rate rise, while others are looking at other amounts up to the 2%, which is the figure the government brought down as CPI for councils. And if they wish to charge a higher percentage, they would have to have special dispensation. While it sounds lovely to have a 0% rate rise, the public needs to think whether they wish to have this with the issue that this leaves over a 10-year period. It is over a $13 million, again, I say over a $13 million black hole over 10 years that we can never make up. So what does this mean to the average valued property? It means 2% is an extra $28 for the whole year. In effect, it's one Palmer in the year, and 1% is $14 for the average valued property. Some could say, what about how people are finding it tough at the moment? And that is true for some, but it's not true for all. And doing a 012 is for all. So for those who have not been negatively impacted, they get a free ride. I have been canvassing different people on how they have been affected with the virus, and while some are truly doing it tough, others, including my fellow presenter, have stated that they have never been in a better position, as the government has provided them with extra with the JobKeeper assistance. In this motion, you will see that I have asked for information on the financial hardship policy and how that can help the ratepayers that are truly experiencing financial hardship. This is all about helping those members of our community that need the help. I have also asked what the potential reduced revenue may mean for council services going forward. As let us not forget, we also have a power station close to closing within 10 years. How soon? Nobody knows. Yet we do know it is closing, and again, that hits our bottom line. And it is this that determines what services, what?
3 minutes.
Oh,
Thank you. Councillor Middlemas speaking the extension. Councillor Howe seconding. All those, any objections to this? All those in favour of an extension, 3 minutes? Thank you. Thanks very much. Sorry, Councillor Gibson. It is hard to see the clock, but it sits on the bottom of the screen there where the presentation is. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I won't
All
need
right.
3 minutes.
Yeah, another 3 minutes.
Yet we do know it's closing, and again, that hits our bottom line. And that's what determines what services we can provide the community. We just will not be able to fund what we have today and what is coming online next year. So I ask the community to please think what they wish and the consequences all the way around and make their submissions. This is a true first that we are going and saying to the community, here's all the options, here's all the consequences, you make the decisions, because any way we go, there's consequences. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Middlemas, you're the seconder.
I'll reserve. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak to this? Councillor McFarlane, you're indicating.
Mr Mayor, I've just got a question that's either to yourself or the CEO. The alternate, if the alternate motion is carried, then the draft budget as proposed in the agenda is not a document. So what are the documents that follow if the alternate motion is carried? So what is the community going to be provided with?
Thank you, Councillor McFarlane. I'll refer to Mr Piacenti. You can answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think in the motion itself, it does articulate some things that we would need to engage with the community about, so particularly in relation to the potential level of rate increases as well as financial impacts and so on. So I think the motion itself probably spells out the elements in addition to the just recently passed business and community support package along with our financial hardship policy. We would have to, over the next couple of days, pull all that information together in a form that can be shared with the community readily. That'll probably be made available through media releases and also on our social media pages, and give the community an opportunity to provide feedback. I think that would effectively be for 2 weeks, and up to the 3rd of July by the time we would advertise that later this week. And then get that feedback back to council in order for council then to make a decision if this motion were to pass in relation to a draft budget. So that helps answer the question, Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, well, just following that on. So if the alternate motion is carried, we go through that process and the feedback comes in, we consider that feedback, then we would need to prepare another draft budget based on that feedback in the form of like what's in the agenda, and then go through that process again.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, that's because the budget is a draft document that council puts out. It's basically advising the community this is what we intend to endorse as a budget after we've heard submissions. So this process, I suppose, as I said, this is an engagement process prior to formalising a draft budget. Then it would this process would occur, get the feedback. A draft budget would then be endorsed at a future council meeting, and then the formal budget would be endorsed after having heard submissions. So this year, you might recall the minister the former minister did allow us to have the budgets and government completed by the end of August. So by having this, if this motion were to pass, it would still be sufficient time to bring that back by the end of August in terms of a formal budget being endorsed.
Thanks, Mr Piacenti. Councillor O'Callaghan.
Apologies, Mr Mayor. I do believe Councillor McFarlane probably wishes to speak to this, but is a subsequent question to what he has raised, if I may.
Thought it might be a question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO. I'm just interested, 2 to 3 weeks is not a significant period of time for engagement. Certainly given the current circumstances we're in, it's not sufficient to do an in-depth engagement. Can I just get clarification from the CEO what he believes that would look like at this point in time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it would be a very tight time frame, and in terms of being able to get feedback in that period, given the current circumstances, would be more difficult than normal. So at this point, we haven't developed up what that would look like. That's what an engagement plan would look like. What I was suggesting is we need a couple of days to finalise that, but the absolute minimum would be obviously in terms of press releases in the media, as well as information on our social media pages. Beyond that, in terms of the time frame available, it would be very hard, I suppose, to have some form of, to be able to schedule an engagement forum, but that's something we could look at in terms of having an opportunity for the community at the end of that. You normally need to give people some sort of form of notice over a couple of weeks normally to say participate in a forum. It does provide a limited opportunity, I suppose, for them to for us to have that forum, and then for them to provide feedback in terms of being able to have the budget endorsed within time. But that is something we could look at. But I think the absolute minimum would be, as I said, media releases around it and media that the mayor might want to undertake in terms of engaging with media, as well as on our social media accounts. So it's probably the extent of it in terms of the basics, but beyond that, there could be the opportunity to do some sort of forum where we might ask people to register and participate, but that will probably, as I said, giving people notice might need to occur sort of at the end of that 2-week period. So just sort of thinking on my feet there, it'd probably be the things that we'd be looking at.
Right. So the answer to both those questions is it would take a couple of days to put together before having these answers, really. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Are there any speakers? Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Howe, Councillor Harriman, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor White.
Well, look, briefly, Mr. Mayor, I'm just a bit concerned. I mean, I think we all know that about 3 months ago we were nearly ready to go with our budget. The coronavirus come along and changed that. We've had lots and lots of discussion over the last probably 2 months, particularly. I think our officers were in a position where they were able to bring back to us a proposed budget that continued delivery of services, allowed us to continue with our capital works and some new borrowings to do 2 major projects, and included in that the allowance for the business and community support package. Whilst, yes, public consultation's fine, but my belief is by adopting the proposed budget as we see it, that will give the community an opportunity to make comment, so that when that comment comes back, we can have a look at it from there. I'm just of the belief, and whilst I'm certainly as concerned as Councillor Gibson and everyone else is, that that cumulative impact over that longer period of time is a lot of money. The reality is, I think we've got to be responsible. We've got to acknowledge that our country has just been through drought, bushfires, and now COVID. I just don't believe that local government can be one on its own going out and saying, well, we'll continue to increase things. I think it's been irresponsible. We're cutting the cloth. Yes, there's some long-term consequences, but I can tell you there's going to be a hell of a lot of long-term consequences as a result of the coronavirus in all regards. So I just don't believe at this point in time, if we ultimately go with the resolution or the recommendation, then our community will certainly tell us if they want to pay more money for rates. That means we need to go back and find some more projects to put in. That's fine too. However, I think we've got to a point where our officers were able to produce something that sits comfortably with me, and I assume perhaps some others. And I just don't think we want to start tinkering with it now after all we've been through. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Howe, you've indicated, and then going to Councillor Harriman and Councillor White. Councillor Howe.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think that for the sake of an extra 3 weeks, it's important that we ask our community what they want. This is all about transparency and about consultation. The reality is, if they want us to have a 0% increase, we're more than happy to go along with that. But what's that cost long term? It's not this year, next year. It's the future. It's the next council, the council after that, which has to live with our decision today. $13 million over 10 years. Every year around budget time, we get community groups coming to us saying we need this. We need new lights at our grounds. We need new toilet blocks. We need new surfaces on our ground. And every year we have to prioritise the top 1 or 2 or 3 to try and get them through. Moving forward, if we lose that out of our budget, what we're going to be able to do? We'll be able to meet what the community expect of us. $28 a year. If you're paying by quarterly instalments, that's $7 every 3 months. I'm not saying it's not going to hurt a lot of people. I'm a wage earner. It's, I with everybody else in the community, it's going to hurt me as well. But what I want to do is hear what people are going to say. If they say 0%, well, then I'll listen to that. If they say, look, you do the 2% as long as we have a hardship fund, and we have options there for people that really need it. They need a lot more than the $7 a quarter or the $28 a year. We're there to help them. And that's what I'm marking now, some guidance off our community, which way they want to go. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Howe. Councillor Harriman, you're next in line as a speaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I will not be supporting the alternate motion. I think I've been fortunate to sit on council when we cut rates back from 6% back to 4%, then back to 2% as a council. We took into account in those situations that the region was doing it hard. We'd had a number of issues over the last 9 years, 10 years that I've been on council, that we have taken the opportunity to cut back not only the rates that we're charging our members of the community, but to cut the cloth of council tighter, and we've still been managing to provide good services. I understand councillors going, oh, we're going to lose $1 million a year. That's $1 million that comes out of the ratepayers' pockets, and that's $1 million that at the moment I don't think our economy can afford to take the hit for. And I'd also like to point out that we will never have enough money to do everything we need to do unless we put our rates up about 50% a year, which is something I would not support. We need to look at not leaving anybody behind. It's fine to say, yeah, there's people earning squillions of dollars and they haven't been hurt. There are people that have been hurt, and if we're just going to trample them underfoot, then we are not looking after all of our community. That's why I'll be pushing for a 0% and supporting, like Councillor McFarlane, a 0% increase or no increase. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillor White, you were next.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm inclined to the view of the original motion too, I have to say. To me, the alternate motion can be actually be part of the conversation that's had subsequent to whatever decision it is. Either we make the decision to accept the alternate motion tonight, or we go with the original, and this is a conversation that can be had, because what we're only doing as a consequence of this process is putting it out there for community feedback, and so that anyway, and I suppose, and that's certainly the way I see it anyhow, that there's the thing for me about it is that we've been able to develop a draft budget that meets all of our imperatives in terms of maintaining service delivery and being able to deliver on the major projects that we're talking about, the Kernel Hall and the Stage 2 of the Maui Activity Centre precinct, and I think that the fact that we've been able to, through the good efforts of the administration of the organisation, to be able to come up with a balanced budget, and obviously we're finishing the 19-20 with a surplus, and I think that in terms of going forward into the future, there's always going to be growth anyway, and so the revenue base is going to naturally increase, and that has been an offset to the 13 million that's been referred to in the report. But the other thing I just particularly want to make an observation about is that even with if it is a 0% increase, there's going to be ups and downs in terms of the individual property owners. Because of as you appreciate, Mr. Mayor, each year the properties are valued by the independent valuer, and those values on our properties go up and down, and so the rate of the dollar that's applied to those properties will have an impact on whether it's a something, a 0 plus something, or could be a 0 minus something in terms of the ultimate calculation on that particular property. And so that needs to be understood as well in the process if we're talking about alternatives. But for me, I think the conversation can be had with our community, and I think that the recommendation we have in the report is probably the way I'm going to be what I'm going to be supporting, Mr. Mayor. Thanks,
Councillor White. I've come to the end of my my list of people who raised their hand all at once. Is there any other speakers to this? Councillor O'Callaghan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think generally there's far too much detail in this. It's new, it's a shift in the way that we do things to take this out to an authentic engagement process. As the CEO has indicated, to put the information together, it's going to be 2 weeks, not 3. So by the time we get that together, agree in principle what it should look like and get it out to community, it's far too short. We've also got a long history of taking our draft budgets out to community, and we get very little general feedback from community. People will pitch in relation to projects, but they don't give general sentiment in relation to budget as presented. So I don't think what we're going to see is the information we would require. The community hasn't had a lot in its control over the last few months, and many have experienced significant change and financial hardship. Some have had impact, some have not, as my council colleagues have alluded to. It's very difficult for us to be in a position to quantify what that means for individual residents, for individual households, because they are diverse, and for many the impact will be ongoing. Whilst we cannot ameliorate the financial impact, we can provide a universal principle for acknowledgement of the current financial challenges that are impacting on some of our community, and we can do this by applying the 0% rate increase as a principled position. It's a very small acknowledgement, but one that gives the determination of decision around how to distribute that amount of money, although it is, as acknowledged, small per ratepayer, but the choice is actually then given to the individuals themselves and not taken by council. We also don't have a readily applicable mechanism to be quite so flexible in terms of giving targeted disbursements, which I know some of my colleagues would like to be able to do as well. But some of those ideas we may have had to shelve in the process. 2 or 3 weeks of consultation, it will be 2, in an engagement space, and I work in that area, it isn't enough. We haven't conditioned the market to the issue we're going to present. We won't be able to provide appropriate gateways to engagement. Advertising, media releases and social media is not enough given the complexity of the detail. We will lose many people in the process. There'll be many people who'll be left out and won't really have that opportunity to engage, which only means those who have a very specific view, who want to deliberately bring that to us, as they would through the normal process of budget consideration, won't have the opportunity to do so. I think whether we like it or not, we're going to have to take a very clear leadership approach on this one. We need to be fair and reasonable, but we also need to be able to apply a principle that's timely and go out to our regular budget consideration process where we can take any feedback at all that the community wants to bring and adjust accordingly. But anything less than that would not be fair to the community and wouldn't give them an appropriate level of engagement that they truly deserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor O'Callaghan. Are there any other speakers to this? Councillor Middleman, you're reserved as a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is all about transparency. This is all about consulting our community. Heard a lot tonight about we have discussed. That's 9 people. We haven't discussed it with our community. Nearly every budget I've ever been associated with has just been somewhere in the region of a CPI increase. In other words, a cost of living increase with very few ramifications. To think that a fortnight is not worth consulting people over, I think is insulting. People are entitled to know what we are going to do. And in this budget, we are going to make some very, very drastic changes. We're at the moment in the process of borrowing and working out how to pay back tens of millions of dollars for projects the state government has given us, and we're very grateful for those, but there's a major shortfall in the funding. We've got to find that money in the coming years. We're looking at a decline in the power industry. We know that about $2 million disappeared out of our budget because of the Hazelwood closure. All those things the officers are saying to us. Councillors know we've talked about the budget cliff. We talk about it continually. Look at the projections over the next 10 years as council's revenue shrinks back. How are we going to handle it? In the draft budget that we looked at initially before COVID, we squeezed $1 million out of it to provide ourselves a little bit of fat to face the coming, I almost use the word crisis in funding that our officers were putting to us. So what our community needs to understand is that we're going to do something which will take $13 million out of our revenue stream over the next 10 years. People need to understand that. If you want to talk to the reality, I can imagine 5 or 6 years, somebody turning around and saying, we're short, we're really short. We've got a really beautiful aquatic facility at Trogan. Let's close the Moe pool and perhaps the Churchill one and the Lawn North one, and people can drive up or go by bus. They're the implications that our community has to look at, and they need to be consulted on it. A fortnight's too short. What are we doing? Are we hiding reality from our community? This is so insulting that our community isn't worth talking to. They need to know what we're talking about. And let's look about these rate cuts. All the information you've received as councillors is that the people who are likely to be affected by the COVID implications work in the retail, small end of business area. And we've looked at it and decided, gee, not a lot of them own their own houses, not a lot of them pay rates. So we've come up and we've just passed a targeted program to help them. Most of the people you're going to be offering zero to because of a drought which totally affected us, bushfires that didn't rage in our area, and COVID, we had 2 cases. Let's look at the implications for the next 10 years. You're about to sentence this community to a very tight period for the next decade, which will mean a reduction in services. At least ask them if that's what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Medalist, just a little bit over time, which is why my hand was up, but we don't have the bell as we normally would, but only a couple of seconds. Thank you very much. Councillor Gibson, as you were the mover.
You can see the way you've got it programmed.
Okay. Good. Councillor Gibson, you were the mover, so you have an option to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, my fellow councillor who just spoke did it well. This is about 2 weeks, but this is more than 2 weeks. This is, if we adopted this motion, it doesn't tell you a percentage. It doesn't say, right, we're going to decide you can or you can't have whatever. It is not doing that. It is about giving the community all the information that we readily have. And I have gone through it with the General Manager of Governance before I ever put the motion up that, yes, we can do it and we have time to speak to the community. We have time for them to come and present to us. So we actually still have a little bit of room on the end. So this wasn't being done so they didn't have time to come and speak to us. This was all about giving them all the information, and then they can tell us that, no, I'm not comfortable with whether it be 0, whether it be 1, whether it be 2, because I know the consequences of all the options. I'm not here foisting any of it on our community. I'm just giving them all the information because the previous or the other motion doesn't tell the community what the consequences are. It sounds nice. And if I was cynical, I would say, oh, there's an election coming up. I'm going to say it's 0% and aren't I going to look good? No, this is all about telling the community these are the consequences. I'm not playing games here. I'm giving the community all the information and then they can tell us what they want. And that's being responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. We've had speakers, so the alternate motion as it's been put, we need to put to a vote. All those in favour of this alternate motion? Councillor Gibson, Councillor Howe, Councillor Middlemas. All those against? Councillor McFarlane, Councillor White, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Law, Councillor O'Callaghan and myself. That one hasn't passed, the alternate motion, which takes us back to the original officer's recommendation that was put. Do I have a mover for this? So councillor McFarlane, you're waving at me, but I'm presuming you're moving this or declaring a conflict? Oh, you're... Councillor McFarlane, you were giving us a wave. I think Councillor McFarlane might be leaving for this bit. Yeah. So Councillor Harriman, I see your hand as moving. Yes. All right. Councillor White.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor White is seconding. Councillor McFarlane, what I'll do is I'll exit you from the meeting if you want. Oh, you're gone. He is gone. All right, he's disappeared. Don't need to do that. So just to check off my list, I've got Councillor Harriman as a mover, Councillor White as a seconder. Opposition? Yes, we have opposition. Thank you. Councillor Harriman as a mover, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I take it we're only voting on resolution 1, not resolution 1 and 2.
We are. We split the budget resolutions into 2 parts because of the conflict that Councillor McFarlane had.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move this section. As we're aware, Councillor McFarlane asked this be separated off because of a conflict of interest. So I'm happy to move that we confirm the proposed salaries and wages in the early learning and care service to be included with the 2021 budget.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Okay, Councillor White.
Second.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak? I think that was Councillor Harriman speaking.
He spoke, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to support the proposed resolution 1 as listed in the agenda, Mr. Mayor. That's yeah, that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speaker to this, either for or against resolution 1, that we confirm the salaries and wages? It's for or against? No other councillors? No. Councillor Harriman, did you wish to close?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We have had speakers for this, so I'll need to put this to the vote. All those in favour of resolution 1? That's all hands. That's 9 hands, 8 hands. I can see. Is carried unanimously. We'll see if we can get the governance officers to bring Councillor McFarlane back into the online meeting. Resolution 1. Councillor McFarlane, you're back with us. Can you just confirm you can see us and hear us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can see and hear you all.
Thank you very much. All right, so we're moving to resolution 2 of 9.1, which is the draft budget. Do I have a mover? Councillor McFarlane and Councillor Harriman at the same time. Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Harriman. Any opposition? Thank you. There is opposition. Councillor McFarlane, did you wish to speak?
Briefly, Mr. Mayor, we have had a fair bit of discussion before. This proposed budget, as the report suggests, aims at a 0% increase. It ensures the continued delivery of services. It provides for new borrowings to do with Moe revitalisation and Kerner Hall projects. It incorporates a capital works program, and it also has the allowance for business and community support within it. Mr. Mayor, by adopting this resolution, this budget will now go out to our community, where there will be opportunities for comments to be made or inputs, and then the council will hear any submissions and at a special meeting to be held in July, and we'll take it from there. So what this is saying here is what is proposed. Tell us what you think. If there's any issues, we can listen to them and take it from there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Harriman, as it seconded, did you wish to speak?
Reserved, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. You're reserved. I'll just make a note of that. Thank you. Any other councillor wish to speak, either for or against? Councillor Gibson, and then Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I said before, it's about telling us what you think. But this motion didn't give all the information. That's why I put the other motion up, to give people the information, because how can you tell us what you think if you haven't got all the information? So it was pretty simple. It was about being good, responsible councillors who are actually giving the community all the information. What have we got to hide? That's it.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Is there any other speakers for or against? Councillor White, you indicated. You can go next, and if anyone, and then Councillor Middlemas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's as the resolution, proposed resolution does indicate, there is authorise the CEO to give public notice of the preparation of the draft budget and make the draft budget available for inspection at council headquarters, etc., and invite submissions in relation to the draft budget, and so that they can be on the deck with us prior to a special council meeting to be held on Monday, the 20th of July next. And so I think that there is an opportunity there for our community to make themselves familiar with the contents of the budget and understand that which we've been talking about earlier this evening in regard to having a 0% increase, but understanding the ups and downs that go with that. And just on that, Mr. Mayor, I also should point out that on the bottom of page 59 of our report, there is the last two paragraphs are important to note as well, that the draft budget proposes a 0% increase in general rates and charges, except for the transfer station fees and the state government landfill levy. And this is below the increase. This is below the increase in most municipal and the state government legislation. The transfer station fees will increase. The transfer station fees will increase to allow council to recover an increase in the fee passed on to the council. Similarly, the landfill levy is proposed to increase by 1 January 2021 by $9.92 per tonne, in line with the increase imposed by the state government on waste disposed into our landfills. So that's another factor that needs to be borne in mind in relation to this particular issue. But I think that, as I said earlier, this is about being able to, with the good efforts of our officers, to be able to come up with a budget that enables us to maintain a broad array of services and at the same time take on board the aspirations we have on behalf of our community in regard to stage 2 of the Moe Activity Centre plan, and of course the important piece of work that we need to be pursuing in relation to Kurnot Hall. And certainly there's going to need to be some very, if you like, wise, prudent financial management going forward, that's for sure. But I think that this council is trying, to me, it's about demonstrating our preparedness to be frugal, and that's what this budget provides.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Middlemas, are you next?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council, by majority, has made its position very clear, and it would be churlish for me to sit back now and say, no, I'm opposed. I will vote because this is what the majority want to go forward, and I think that's the way with budgets, but I will say to councillors, don't hide behind bushfires, don't hide behind frugal management, don't hide behind, oh, we need longer to consult. Let's get out there and tell the people the facts. Tell them about the budget shortfalls that will be coming and how we intend to manage those. Because at the moment, I'm not sure I can see how we're going to do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Middlemas. Are there any other councillors wish to speak to this? Councillor O'Callaghan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All for transparency and consideration of this, and in this actual report that we're considering tonight, special council meeting agenda, it states councillors are likely to be able to recover the amount foregone this year by not increasing rates to the maximum amount permissible at a cost of approximately 13.3 million over 10 years. I think it can hardly be contested that we're hiding behind anything when it's in a publicly available agenda. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Callaghan. Are there any other speakers to this? Councillor Harriman, you have reserved, but just see if there's any other. Did you want to go?
And I have a question through you to the CEO, if I could please, Mr Mayor.
Question, thank you.
Yep, just wanting to know, we recently had a magnesium smelter approved in Latrobe City, which I believe was stated as a $50 million investment. Just wondering through the CEO, what increase to rates revenue will that have? Roughly.
Calculator there, Mr. Piasecki?
I don't have my calculator on me. I'm not sure whether one of my general managers has that, particularly the general manager of organisational performance might have that their fingertips in terms of the rate in the dollars. So, but I had some time, so I could go to the rates and charges, which is in the budget. If you give me a couple of minutes for industrial properties.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, just
Right.
relates to some of the discussions we're having.
If it were valued, sorry, at $15 million, industrial properties. And if it were revalued in a financial year, that would generate, by my calculation, if I got the numbers right, $70,000.
Thank you. Does that answer the question for you,
Yep,
Councillor
that's the
Harris?
information I was after. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr CEO.
I think Councillor Middlemas has a question as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. My question, just to follow on from Councillor Harriman, is this a new building which will be built and therefore attract a new valuation, or is it simply a process that's going to take place in an existing rateable property?
It's just very missing. I'm not certain of the exact response to that. I say what I was suggesting is if there were a supplementary valuation, I should clarify that, of $15 million added to our rates base in a financial year, then that would generate that calculation of $70,000 in additional rates to be paid.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Harriman, you reserved before as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The option to do that before Councillor McFarlane closes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do appreciate that. Mr Mayor, I put it out there that to remain competitive with industry, we've been very lucky that Magnesium, Latrobe Magnesium have announced they're operating. We have a vast array of industrial to land that other industries are looking at coming at. We have a number of investments that are looking to come to this region. And I'd also like to point out that a number of other regional and rural councils have already put forward that they're going to go 0% rate increase. And if it's a $70,000 hit per year to a company's bottom line, that is going to be something that they will be thinking about. So I'm looking at, you know, councils have asked, we're going to take $1 million hit. The hit could be higher if we don't move with other councils and look at what is best for the region. And to me, that is attracting new businesses and making it a place that people want to come and live. Now, if our rates are considerably higher than other areas, if our rates keep going up during a time of distress such as now, then I can see we're going to lose businesses and then we're going to have other businesses not look at coming to this region. So I put it out there that there is a way to make up that money, and it's by attracting new businesses. And by having a 0% rate increase and keeping us on the same footing as a large number of other rural and regional councils, then we're staying in the hunt to attract those new businesses. I'd also point out that I've been approached by a number of ratepayers, as I'm sure all councillors are when we go shopping, when we go out to do our daily routines and parts of clubs we're part of, that a number have made it very, very plain to me that the only option for council was a 0% rate increase, that they cannot take any more, that they've appreciated that over the last number of years, council has brought the rates down from where it was at around 6%, back to 4, back to 2. They see that at this point in time, they understand everyone has to tighten their belt, and they understand that council will need to tighten its belt so that it can provide a 0% rate increase. And I understand some councillors would love to see us looking 10 years into the future. We never know whether we're going to get another COVID. We never know when we're going to get another bushfire. We never know if we're going to get a whole new industry start up here because we were at 0% and it attracted them. Yes, we face tough times ahead, but I'd also like to point out, councillors, that we've had tens of millions of state and federal government money spent in this region that hasn't had to come out of our pocket, that has more than made up for the rate cuts that we're looking at foregoing with the 0% rate increase. And I'd urge my fellow councillors, and I'd fully support the words of Councillor McFarlane earlier, and I'd ask my councillors to support this budget proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harriman. Councillor McFarlane, you were the mover on this, so you have an opportunity now to close the debate.
Well, just briefly, Mr Mayor, and I think that there's been some good debate. I certainly, as Councillor Callaghan has comment on, I certainly don't believe that anyone has had anything to hide through this process at all. We have a full report here which gives the details. It's no different to every other year. We don't go out before the budget and ask residents what they would like. We propose a budget. As I say, it's only a proposal. We propose a budget. We go through a consultative process to get community input. We're doing that this year the same as we have for the last 3 years that I've been here, and certainly the last 30 odd years that I've looked at this council with interest. I support Councillor Harriman's comments, but I do make the point, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not necessarily after votes. This is about, we were elected to represent this municipality, and as we have done every year, we propose a budget, we put it out for comment, and then we can consider those comments, and we're doing nothing different to what we've done in the past. I commend the motion to council. Thanks,
Councillor McFarlane. So now we've had debate and it has now closed. We need to put this to the vote as the resolution 2 of 9.1. All those in favour? Councillor McFarlane, Councillor White, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Middlemiss, I can see you, Councillor O'Callaghan and myself. And those against? Councillor Gibson. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. So that has passed with a majority. Thank you very much, councillors. That is our final item on this evening's special council meeting. We will be back for our next council meeting in July and look forward to doing this again. Thank you very much for your debate and for the rigour that went through before the meeting this evening over the past weeks, and also this evening it was done respectfully, and thank you very much for the work that you've done. Now we have time to move forward with this budget and do our community consultation and exhibition. So I thank you very much for this evening to the people who have tuned in at home. We hope you can get back to some dinner now. It's 7:05 and we wish you a good night. Thank you.